Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. As part of a big news today, we'll be discussing the Malabar exercise in the quad. But before we begin, as always, we are available on Telegram. So do download the app via the QR code given here or the link in the description below. Further, we have a very interesting session of ETW or Economy this week for 29th October to 4th November today in the evening. So do join us for Economy this week. With this, let's enter the topic which we have to discuss today under big news, which is the Malabar exercise and the quad. Malabar has always been a very important exercise which we used to actually conduct with the US. However, over a period of time it has evolved and become much more important, and now it has technically become the exercise for the quad itself. But why are we discussing this topic today in big news? Because this year marks the 30th year or the 30th anniversary of the Malabar exercise, which started in 1992 between India and the US. And it has a very checkered history. It's an interesting history because in between the Malabar exercise did not happen. But the timing of Malabar 2022 is also very interesting with regards to how China is responding to it, because China has also put in research vessels under quotes, what is called the Yuan Wang 6, that has entered the Indian Ocean via the Sunda Strait. And the timing of this research vehicle and the Malabar, along with a very important long range missile test, most probably Agni missile test, which is going to happen this week. Therefore, these three things are coming together, which is the Malabar exercise, the timing of the research vehicle itself, and more than that, the long range missile test which we are going to do this week. So in a way, the Malabar exercise has always been very important, but over a period of time it has evolved and become even more interesting and a staple for the quad. So what is the Malabar exercise? What is its history? So it's a multilateral war gaming naval exercise which started in 1992. That is why the 30th anniversary. It began as a bilateral exercise between India and the US. It was a very US centric concept. There were two editions which happened in 1995 and 1996. However, there was a major break till 2002 because of Pokhran and the Indian nuclear tests. After 2002, this exercise was conducted each year. However, in 2007, both Japan and Australia for the first time participated. And since 2014, India, US and Japan participated in this event. So it became a trilateral exercise rather than a bilateral exercise, and Malabar was technically expanding. But the major breakthrough and the most important moment in Malabar was when in 2020, after China was trying to bully Australia into its basic wishes, Australia joined the Malabar exercise formally, and thereafter it became Quad and Malabar going together, and this was to contain China in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, this is a very important point. You need to understand this point, which is it is India, US, thereafter India, US, Japan. And once we saw that Chinese diplomacy was becoming too much for Australia and Australia wanted to counter China, it chose Malabar as an exercise wherein the Malabar exercise became the way in which Quad was expressing itself, because Quad is an informal grouping. Therefore, it was expressing itself militarily in the Malabar. And for the first time in Malabar 2020, all four members participated formally. And this is a very important aspect of Malabar, that Malabar started as India US in countering China, thereafter Japan joined in countering China, and now we have the fourth most important, which is Australia. The quad itself, it is nothing but India, US, Japan and Australia are now expressing themselves via Malabar. So Malabar has a checkered history because of the fact that Pokhran test led to a major period in which it was not conducted. However, since 2002, it became India-US standard exercise. Then Japan joined in, and the context of Malabar is important because at the end of the day, it is about Chinese presence, the string of pearls theory, the concept of Belt and Road Initiative, the concept of maritime Silk Route. It was about countering Chinese presence in the Indo-Pacific, in the Indian Ocean, and therefore Malabar became an important expression of Quad trying to do that. Now, what is Quad? I've been using this word quite a lot. Quad is technically an informal strategic dialogue between India, US, Japan and Australia, and the shared objective of this grouping is to have a free, open and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. Technically an indirect way of saying that we will make sure that China is not able to dominate this sector. Quad is a direct expression of Japan, Australia and India's basic desire to counter China, and the US has found these three as a very important way of creating this quadrilateral via which they can counter China in the Indian Ocean itself. So in the Indian Ocean area has become a very important sector in which defense and military exercises have now become a staple. The future of research itself is also in the Indian Ocean, and that is why the presence of India, US, Japan and Australia in the Indian Ocean is very, very important. Now, what is the significance of Malabar 2022, which is happening as of right now? It's important first because all the chief of naval staffs argued that there needs to be further enhanced interportability between the navies, which is good for India, which is that interportability means that the same information can be shared over 4 different navies, which means that there would be a certain type of syncing of the military equipment, and which helps India become more and more important in the Indo-Pacific world, and we get access to a lot of American equipment and data. However, the timing of the entry of Yuan Wang 6 is equally important because this is being done when there's a long range missile test which India is planning next week. Therefore, the Malabar exercise induced the Chinese to send this vessel, which was near Indonesia as of right now, and is entering the Indian Ocean via the Sunda Strait. And at the same point of time, China is using these research vessels for dual purpose. While research activity is allowed in international waters, what happens is that the data which is gathered is technically dual in nature, both military and research based, and the motive of the Chinese vessel is doubtful. And basically we have an Agni test which is coming next week. Malabar has now even more important presence with regards to an exercise because China is now responding by sending quote unquote research vessels into the Indian Ocean. So before we end the session, a very small summary. Very simply, Malabar, a very important exercise. 30 years of Malabar has happened, started with India and US, then became India, US, Japan, and after 2020 it became Quad technically, India, US, Japan and Australia. The fact is we're talking about enhanced interportability. The Chinese vessel being in the Indian Ocean is equally concerning, and India is planning a long range missile test which we will cover next week itself, is something which the Chinese are curious about, and the timing of all three together is very, very significant. So with this I would like to end the session. Thank you so much for your patience. I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.